you very much for tuning into another franchise ranking video. Full disclosure, I am not a fan of the Prom Night series, so do not expect any glowing praises. If that does not sit well with you, I encourage you to click off this video. If you don't mind, then keep watching as I rank the Prom Night films from worst to best-ish. In 5th place is Prom Night 4, Deliver Us from Evil. Released in 1992, directed by Clay Boris and written by Richard Beatty, it is the 4th film in the Prom Night series and follows a deranged Catholic priest who targets 4 teenagers on their prom night. I was hopeful with this one. I thought it was going back to a more human killer storyline, but I was wrong. It's just as shit as the others, only now we have to deal with religious crap. I didn't think the series could get worse after the 3rd one, but here we are. This film was really just beating a dead series. I used to say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series was one of the most contradictive film series, if not the most, but in retrospect, Prom Night has it beat. We had a period in the middle of the series where the films kept to a character for some form of cohesion, but if you step back and look, there really isn't any. Then you look at this film and I just can't find a good reason for its existence. Even the plot is something pulled out of a tabloid magazine and slapped into a script without a second thought. There's nothing memorable about this film. While it's utterly terrible, it's also utterly boring, and so one can't even hate it enough to remember hating it. I completely forgot this one even existed. In 4th place is Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss, released in 1989 and directed and written by Ron Oliver. It's the 3rd film in the Prom Night series, and in it the malevolent spirit of Mary Lou Maloney returns to Hamilton High, where she manipulates a naive male student into helping her wreak havoc on the school. I don't understand how you can spoof a film that practically spoofed itself ages ago. This is what I mean about cohesion and this series lacking any of it. We have gone from revenge film to supernatural film to comedy, and I use that word very loosely. It just gets worse. There's nothing to like about any of these movies. Each film feels like someone came along and just decided to do whatever the hell they wanted, viewer be damned, and as long as a prom occurred in it, it fit the series. Everything about this series is just so uncaring and lazy. This film is full of cliches, and while, as I've quoted before, cliches work, that's why they're cliches. So saying that, what I mean is the specific cliches they use do work and can work, they just don't in this film because they have been used poorly or there is too many of them. Before you accuse me of just hating on campy films, I live for campy films. Camp films give me life, but for me this wasn't camp, it was just stupid. It was unfunny, unnecessary, and I just didn't like anything about it. In 3rd place is Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, released in 1987, directed by Bruce Pittman and written by Ron Oliver. It's the 2nd film in the Prom Night series and follows a high school student who becomes possessed by Mary Lou Maloney, a student who died at her high school prom in 1957. So this was originally intended to be a standalone film called The Haunting of Hamilton High, which, as much as I don't like this film, I might have liked it a fraction more had they not attached it to the Prom Night film. It was very stupid to tie a film like this to a film like that. Even if you're trying to capitalize on the previous film, you're doing so at the detriment of this film because you're not going to watch the first film and go into a sequel expecting a film about possession. I strongly disapprove of film series that switch to supernatural storylines out of nowhere, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, which did that with the 3rd film, and Urban Legend, which also did it with the 3rd film. Now, Urban Legend 3 and Prom Night 2 actually have similar plots, but I like Urban Legend 3 better. What I hate about this film mostly is that the story is stupid, and we're following a character not worth investing in. We're following around a 17-year-old who is the whore of the town, and that's true because she wears that badge with honor. She is rude, mean, disrespectful, hurts others, and so she's the kind of character you love to see get their comeuppance. So the fact it follows her getting revenge from beyond the grave and turning the virginal character into a slut is just following a trend among films of that era and how they depicted women that I'm not a fan of. Not to mention, you can see where it clearly rips off Carrie. You can't pretend it isn't there. I just find this film dumb, and so many scenes are dragged out or just don't make sense. In 2nd place is Prom Night, released in 1980, directed by Paul Lynch with a screenplay by William Gray from a story by Robert Guza Jr. It's the 1st film in the Prom Night series and follows a group of high school seniors who are targeted at their prom by a masked killer seeking vengeance for the accidental death of a young girl 6 years earlier. By comparison, the first was bearable, but everything that came after is just a nightmare. It has the most annoying opening 7 minutes of any film I have ever seen. Horrific repetitive dialogue for 7 minutes straight. This doesn't feel like a slasher film at all. The kills are so sparse. There was a long ass dance number, more dancing, and a ton of music blaring, and occasionally some kills. The way they kept calling this a slasher classic, I thought it would be good, but this is rather shite. The following year, The Prowler came out, and while that's a pretty terrible film, I think it did a far better job than this film by a country mile, especially in terms of special effects thanks to Tom Savini. Even the advertising for this film is very misleading, even all these years later, and I don't understand that. I know Siskel and Ebert complained about the advertising back in the 80s, which I appreciate, but the fact is, this is 40 years later and it hasn't changed. Even though most of us, before we've seen the film, know what it's about, they still sell it as a film about a serial killer murdering promiscuous women, like virtually every horror film of this era, or ever, really. I'm always the first to call out a film for its use of gratuitous violence, and I know some have praised this film's restraint, and I believe you can restrain the violence in a film and still be effective. I just don't think this is it. The way it's filmed and the fact so many scenes in this film featured absolutely nothing of interest make the violent scenes, which aren't that violent, feel almost misplaced because they're such an afterthought. There's a lack of balance in this film for sure. Also, I find these films where a person randomly decides to seek revenge like a decade after the event itself is just absurd. I mean, in this case, it's 6 years. I don't understand or see the catalyst for the killings, and don't say child killers are a bad idea. Homicidal kid movies are amazing and creepy, and they're more likely to get away with it. And in first place is Prom Night, released in 2008, directed by Nelson McCormick and written by J.S. Cardone. It's the 5th film in the Prom Night series and a loose remake of the 1980 film of the same name. In it, a high school girl named Donna is traumatized after witnessing her former teacher brutally murder her entire family after he had become dangerously obsessed with her. 3 years later, as Donna gets ready for her senior prom, he escapes from a mental institution, follows her to the hotel hosting the prom, and kills anybody who gets in the way of his reunion with Donna. Firstly, I am not saying this is a great film, I'm just saying it's the best of a bad bunch really. The benchmark was very low. But this is one of the extremely rare times I think a remake or reboot, because let's face it, this film is a reboot, not a remake, just call it what it is. But either way, it's one of the rare times I think the remake is better than the original. Not fantastic, but better. This film opens very much like 1979's When a Stranger Calls, which is another reason why I like the remake of that film more. In both cases, all the interesting events, or basically everything that would typically occur during the third act of any horror film, is actually the opening for both and really goes into detail on what is or has happened before doing a time skip, and then everything afterwards feels like we're watching what would be the sequel. I think there are plenty of films that can open with a violent opening and then do a time skip to the events of this film. Halloween did it and it's great. Mostly because we didn't know at that point Laurie was Michael's sister, so we get a nice reveal to look forward to. We don't have any of that in this film. We have a killer obsessed with his student for unknown reasons, but then again, stalkers don't need a reason. We're seeing Donna deal with PTSD, which is good. I appreciate when films do this, but that's kind of it in terms of what's interesting. Also, the downside of this film is that the victim of the story doesn't get to rise up and become the hero. She doesn't get that traditional final girl moment where she triumphs over her tormentor and takes her power back. She's literally the damsel in distress for the entire film, which means the film also lacks catharsis for the lead. There is so much emphasis on the prom and how important it is. Even the aunt and uncle who know this psycho is on the loose. Aunt is like, we need to get her home and protect her, and uncle's all, no, she's better off at prom, she deserves to be happy. Dude, she deserves to live, fuck prom. I love the kills, there are plenty of kills and the bodies are hidden everywhere and popping out like Jack in the Boxes, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and it's great. But there is no emphasis or interesting story between the killer and his intended victim. He's obsessed with her, and if he can't have her, no one can. But there needs to be more to that. It's a very used storyline, so the fact we don't get to experience the evolution or building of his obsession takes away from its intensity. If we were starting at the beginning and seeing him meet her and become obsessed, that puts more weight into their dynamic and ups the creep factor, but instead it's rather bland. I also don't think Jonathan Schaech sells it as a psychopathic killer. It's a tricky role, especially when you're playing the character as very deadpan and emotionless, which doesn't coincide with his obsession very well. Characters like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees can do this specifically because they wear masks. The masks mean we have no faces to read, no expressions to gauge. We're cut off, and that makes the person behind the mask a dangerous mystery. But in this, we see his face, we know his identity. So if he can't 100% deliver that psychotic demeanor, it's going to be very noticeable. And in this case, his entire performance just felt like he's going through the motions and simply doing what the script told him to do. I don't see any intensity in him, any sense of conviction, or that in his mind, he is in the right, something to make him and his actions menacing. It just felt matter of fact. So while I think this film has a lot of promising elements and had a promising approach, it completely bombed the execution. So it is technically not a good film, but it is the best in this series. And that, folks, is my ranking of the Prom Night films, a series that just makes me go, huh? But no disrespect, of course, to any fans of the series or any of the films I've mentioned. So please comment below and tell me how you would rank this series. I would love to hear from you. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. So stay happy, stay healthy, watch movies, and until then, bye!